Hi, my name is Nathan Thompson. I'm a writer and a journalist, and I'm speaking to you from Riverside in beautiful Phnom Penh. It's Sunday evening, just about, and it's the time when all the families come and hang out by the river. And I'm here to do the second of two videos. This one is about what is going through an addict's mind when you're trying to get them to change their behavior. So, addiction is characterized by the repeated failure to stop doing behavior that is destructive. And often these failures come after protracted promises and debates with loved ones, family members. And it's perhaps true that if you're watching this, you have a loved one who is suffering from addiction. And what is quite baffling to people is the inability of an addict to logically see that their behavior is causing damage and therefore stop the behavior. And the reason for this is logic has lost all power in the mind of an addict. Really, the addicted mind is driven by an insatiable craving for drugs, a craving that is just absolutely all powerful. It's like an erupting volcano in your mind. When the addiction is very serious and active, it's like that volcano is continuously erupting, and it's almost impossible to have a non-drug orientated thought. If you're not high, you're thinking about getting high. And it's a cliche, but it's true. When you're not taking drugs, you're always thinking about how to take drugs. And depending on how bad the addiction has progressed, depending on how far the addiction has progressed, depends how compromised the thinking, rational mind is. So the worse the addiction, the more compromised the thinking, rational mind is. And this is the bit of the mind that remains lucid and aware of what's happening. The bit of the mind that sort of is recoiling in horror from the horrible actions undertaken by the body and the rest of the mind. So the part of the reason that addiction is so destructive is that it splits the mind into two camps. It makes you schizophrenic. On the one hand, there's a bit of your brain going, oh, I really wish I could stop. This is awful. What am I doing? I'm stealing. I'm doing all kinds of morally dubious things to try and get this drug that's destroying my body. What on earth is going on? But then there's the other part of your mind, which is just, I need the drug. End of. You're taking the drug. And when I was in recovery but relapsing, what I found myself was I could feel in my brain the coming relapse. The volcano had been stopped by a stint in rehab, but it was still rumbling away there. And I knew it was going to erupt sooner or later, and whether it was a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I knew eventually that volcano would erupt, and that drive to take drugs would just become so profound as to become literally irresistible. People talk about, their mind wanting to go home and their feet literally taking them in the other direction. It does feel like that. It's like the bit of your mind the rational mind that says, I don't want to do this, I'm going to fight against this. You learn that you're never going to win. So you just get to the point where you just give up and think, do you know what, my addicted mind is too strong. And when it needs to take drugs, I'm just going to follow it, because trying to stop from my own power is just impossible, and it causes more and more stress. So that's the actual tragedy of what's going inside the mind of an addict. So if you take that kind of mind and put it in a situation where a loved one is trying to remonstrate with them, this is harming you, it's harming the family, it's harming your job, you need to stop this. What's happening is you're either communicating with the rational mind, and the addict is very placative and very oh yeah, of course, I want to stop the behavior. I know I promise not to do this again, yeah? And what you have to understand is when those words are coming out of the addict's mouth, there is a silent bit of the brain, the addicted bit of the brain, that is just basically happy to say whatever you need whatever needs to be said to get you off their back so they can go and take drugs. And it's not the person who is consciously choosing that behavior, it's simply the consequence of an addiction that's been allowed to get completely out of control. So it's either that is what's happening, or they'll get angry and they'll fight against you going, oh, you're always on my case, and they'll react with anger and frustration. And this again is driven by the addicted mind that is silent in these conversations. The addicted mind is using the anger as a form of manipulation to get you again off the back so they can take drugs again. So the reason why repeated conversations and remonstrations with addicts fails to work is because you're only talking to that bit of the mind they are allowing you to see. The real power of the addiction is hidden away in the back room of a mind, and you're not getting through to that bit of the addiction. And you can look at neurological research that's been done on this, and the changes in the chemistry and physicality of the mind and the physical brain. You can look at neurological studies on addicts, and they can point to parts of the brain that are enlarged, and they're often to do with very strong driving forces, which I personally experienced during my addiction as just an incredibly powerful, irresistible volcanic eruption that just literally took me onto the streets and waving money at the nearest dealer I could find. So what can be done? I mean, one thing that it's probably worth stop doing is, if you're dealing with an addict with at a stage of addiction where it's quite serious, you should probably think about getting professional help, because, like I said, in order to get to that bit of the brain that is kept away and kept secret but is driving the addiction, you need to have a level-headed professional. Family members are not the ones to be doing that job. So for me, it meant going to a rehab where over time I learned to first accept that bit of my brain, accept that was how it was functioning, and start to take responsibility for my actions. Now, that's not to say the family has no role to play in it. I think the most helpful thing that a family can do is just to offer love and acceptance, to stop the whole guilt and blame game, because the guilt and the blame will tend to make the addict relapse more and turn to drugs more, because the guilt and the shame leads them to think, oh, I'm a worthless person and I'm not worth saving. And then the addicted mind will take that and go, oh, yeah, sure, you're worthless. Might as well take drugs then, because no one cares and you're a useless person anyway. So making them feel bad about themselves is probably the last thing you can ever want to do. And often families can make that mistake when they're trying to get them to change their behavior. They might sort of bring up a bad incident they did, and as a way of trying to get them to change their behavior. But in fact, this just makes them feel guilty, which will lead to another relapse. So what we're looking for here is just complete loving acceptance, but not acceptance of destructive behaviors, but acceptance of the individual as themselves, as a human being, and then taking them towards a professional that can help, whether that is, a rehab or a 12-step group or a religious group. There's a lot of different options out there. Me personally, I was in a very good rehab for 3 months. After that, it was another 3 months with a 12-step sponsor, and then it was to do, for me personally, meditation and yoga and sort of building my life, building a drug-free life, which I couldn't have done without the help of my family, who supported me throughout that period. But I think it's very important to have a professional intervention, especially with a quite advanced addiction. So, that's the story of what was going through my mind, and probably through a lot of addicts' minds when a family member or loved one is trying to get them to change their behavior. So I hope this video was helpful to you.